I don't have the agenda in front of me, so I guess we'll just proceed with an open item here. Do I have any comments from the public? No, I don't think we do. So we are going to consider and act on the draft of the Water Reclamation Facility Number 1 Division Matrix.
All right.
Okay.
We sent out, so what has transpired since your last meeting? I had asked for comments. I received some. I sent them on to Corello. Corello in turn basically revamped their whole program. Refined some things. There were 7 criteria. Now there's 6. Reduced some of the sub criteria and kind of cleaned that up. And then also created a definitions page for the 6 parent criteria. I call them whatever. That kind of will help assist. I think some folks were getting bogged down in the sub criteria as it pertains to trying to fill out the matrix. And really it's these 2 things that need to go together. So we have had a couple districts already move through it and different ways to do it, but they went kind of what's done so far, worked fairly well was folks came with their thoughts and then you kind of go right down the list and see what everybody thinks and agree on one or the other. That's what the other districts have done. I mentioned I can just collect all y'all's and package them up too. So whatever you'd like to do.
Can you guide us through it?
So,
Like we've done it the other months? Sure.
so each one of us are going to fill one of these out.
Only one for the mud.
Yeah, so
Okay.
what some of the other months have done that worked out fairly well is basically just go right down the list as a group. And if anyone has any strong feelings about one way or the other, kind of share that with the group. And it might be a lot of them are real easy. Yeah, I really think this is more important than that or whatever. And we can go through it. And if there's kind of a mix, then if it really comes down to it, 3-2, we'll could, I guess, theoretically get the selection. Otherwise, in most cases, most of them were pretty, there might be a couple that, there's competing interests, but.
Sounds good.
Yep. So the first one was, basically so they also moved life cycle costs, up to criteria number 1. They kind of renamed them too. So, or renumbered them, excuse me. So life cycle cost versus operation and maintenance considerations. I think a lot of the groups have, value overall life cycle cost pretty high in the comparisons, but.
For life cycle cost.
Yeah.
I think so too.
So yeah, that's how it goes, just like that. Yep, done. So I'll make a note of it here and then I can go over it at the end just to make sure it's what y'all think y'all agreed on.
Yep.
Okay, number 1, good. Life cycle cost versus use of existing infrastructure.
Life cycle cost.
Agreed.
Life cycle cost.
Agreed.
Life cycle cost versus safety.
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 I was life cycle cost.
Here, 2-1.
I was too. I'd be curious to get more.
I kind of was too. So why safety over
Okay.
cost?
There's no point in building a facility if it's putting workers in danger of any shape or size. And my background and experience in oil and gas development for the subsurface, that was always number 1 before you opened the door, before you did anything. So what is a safe operation look like? Is it designed into the system or not? And that came above anything else.
Also,
That would be inherent in the whole
I would assume that
project.
the scope of any of the alternatives would meet a certain safety standard, right?
Assumption wise.
You would be surprised. It has to be designed into the system that it operates safely, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not at all convinced that life cycle, any value, if you will, cost comes ahead of safety.
My only reason for not checking life cycle, if safety was safety at any expense or every expense, because there is a limit to that then too.
Oh, I mean, as low as, you look at the risk as low as possible, or that's called ALARP or something. Yeah, I mean.
If you read,
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, if you read the description of safety, that's That's what made me choose 4.
So,
So it does impact community.
Yeah, and it's economic reason.
and so safety could go beyond a handrail or, safe walking paths or things like that. A lot of those are already gonna be inherent in the project. As it notes in the description here, it talks about hazardous chemicals.
Right.
So there are options that may not be as cost effective, perhaps, versus using hazardous chemicals, which granted are day-to-day used all the time, but there are alternatives from a safety standpoint that could increase the safety of the facility.
Not as cost effective, perhaps.
Perhaps not as cost
Yeah, that's
effective.
what I was thinking.
That was my hesitation.
Yeah,
Well, I guess that becomes the question is if we prioritize safety, then certainly that would have an impact on the cost side of it too, the life cycle cost.
it would have to.
Right.
Definitely.
I'm
Yeah.
comfortable with
So you're comfortable with going with safety?
it.
For safety.
So it'll show up on the life cycle cost as well.
Okay.
I can roll that in the chemical business and hazardous chemicals, and I throw out muriatic acid in my pool 2 days a week, and it's not exactly a safe chemical, but I got no alternative.
Sure.
Bleach.
All right, I'm
Bleach.
convinced. I'm convinced.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, we'll go with 4, that's fine, all right. Life cycle cost versus constructability and sequencing.
This is the most challenging one for me. You think about the alternatives, again, not biasing anything, but I think we may have unexpected costs if there are some, how should we say, conflicts under certain circumstances that we may not anticipate at this stage.
From a timing perspective, you mean?
Yeah, just trying to go down the questions. How complex will the coordination be between the contractor operations team during construction? So if you have separate construction operations, there won't be that interaction. Now, the length of shutdowns required, well, the plant can't be shut down.
Well,
So
it can be, and you have to do alternatives to address that, like hauling off sewage to somewhere else.
this is expense there.
Absolutely. Bypass pumping or hauling off.
Yeah.
A lot of different things. It will definitely be some construction gymnastics when it comes to repair or replacing in place. There's no doubt. Is it done? It's done all the time.
Yeah.
Most municipalities don't have the luxury of having property next door to go do greenfield work.
Right.
That's going to be the easiest constructability and sequencing you could ever imagine,
Yeah.
because you're not the plant next to it is still running till the end when you got to do the connectors. The connections.
That's not piping systems. Yeah.
So is that not built into the cost? And
I mean, every one of these you could argue that there's some cost aspect of it.
Yeah.
Just do you just overall think that I don't care about anything else, cost is more important to me than how hard the construction is and sequencing and all that. See,
So we have to look at it.
well,
Yeah, this was, like I said, given the discussion, this is exactly the dilemma I've found myself in trying to answer these questions. And
well, we also have to think how that's because we're gonna have to sell this to the public. So,
oh, I had a question. Is there just going to be one of these for each mud that then goes to Carollo? Okay.
right.
Okay. And so Carollo is going to take them and make a final, criterion selection.
Correct.
Okay.
And I believe SGRA also has input as well.
Right, right. Well, of course they should because they're the owner operator. Yeah.
I'm thinking like the cost.
I'm for life cycle cost.
Okay. All right. I'm going for criterion 5.
I chose 5 too, but I don't, Maybe I don't appreciate,
Icebreaker.
maybe I don't
No, no,
appreciate.
no, no pressure, Aaron.
There's
Oh, I know.
That's the beauty of it.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right.
Preference.
But it really makes you think about it.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, those are good
It was
inputs.
very
Well, and
difficult.
it's also great to bounce off one another because you
Yeah.
changed my mind on one of them, but you're
Right.
not changing my mind on this one.
What we saw, that's what's been happening.
I get it.
Discussion too.
I guess my question, I'm looking at some of the sub-criteria, which I know we don't want to get bogged down into. But certainly some of the shutdowns under certain maintenance situations would be my biggest question here, and unfortunately, I don't know how we get more context there without talking about the specific alternatives.
Yeah, I mean, they'll get through them. Whether or not, the interesting thing that we don't know is if we want just a really smooth sequencing, does that necessarily have, there's other cost factors involved,
Mhm.
like buying the property and whatever, whatever we build on that other side, versus just saying, look, regardless of how it's constructed, cost is number one to me. I think that would be the way to think about it. Because again, it may be that repair or replace in place, even though it's going to be, a complicated sequencing, doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be more expensive. It just means that now there will be more risk of breaking permit, and SJA is going to have to do a really strong job to make sure that the effluent come out of the plant is still meeting permit.
Mhm.
Particularly if they got, clarifiers, that whatever they got down, at the time, whatever they're sequencing at the time. But
How likely are those maintenance shutdowns for any specific alternative? We don't need to go into the details of them, but I guess how is this an issue or a non-issue?
I mean, they would be planned, so they are likely, and they would have a plan in place to address that for whatever duration that they're going to need to have something down for.
Okay.
Whether that means that, like I said, they'll be bypass pumping, or whether they'll be wet hauling to the other plant. I mean, there's a number of different ways to do it.
Okay.
Every treatment plant has a little bit of buffer where you could shut it down and it start to growing, and then they know when they go, okay, we got to turn it back on,
Yep.
so they can do some work while that's happening. So there's that kind of gymnastics is going to have to happen,
Okay.
and it will be inevitable. And like I said, there will be some of that even on the other option,
Yeah.
because you'll still have to do the tie-ins and get it all connected and repiped to the new one,
Okay.
if that one is chosen.
I would lean towards life cycle cost only because I think my concerns with constructability are related to the potential cost impact and how we would navigate those things.
Perfect.
So that's one.
That's the only one.
All right, next one's life cycle versus cost versus community impact.
Neil, you may have a very different feeling about this one.
I know.
I made my plume model from the plant, and by the time the plume gets to me, it's somewhat dissipated. I don't know. I'll be upfront. I put down life cycle costs for this one.
I think we all,
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. O&M considerations versus use of existing infrastructure.
Two.
Yeah, criterion two, I have that. Yeah.
uh-huh.
Okay. O&M versus safety.
I'm for again.
Well, based upon our previous answer, I think it'd be kind of hard for us not to go with the 4. But that's my personal input.
For
Okay. Operation and maintenance considerations versus constructability and sequencing.
Let me ask you.
Like,
I was. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. I'm talking out loud.
Well,
I should.
I think, rolling back around cost versus constructability, but then we're looking at a different thing, O&M considerations. And I think the sequencing and the constructability really weighs heavy against that criterion too. So I went for 5 for that one.
I would agree with that.
that's not what I chose, but I
No,
would
I
agree
would-
with it too.
Because you're operating
Mhm.
after you've done all the construction and everything and testing, and you're finally gonna hook it up. So, yeah,
One's kind of during construction
yeah,
and then after construction.
right.
Which one do you kind of want to, is more paramount? Getting through it with all, more efficiently, or the long-term effects of needing more people, or is it new technology, or whatever the case may be that will have to be dealt with during, or excuse me, after construction?
Okay, what's the
I think we have
consensus?
two again. There's the typewriter.
So what
I
was,
think with 5.
you went with 5, so is that 5,
No, I
5,
went
5?
five.
Okay, and I thought you did Ron too. didn't
I
you?
was 2.
You were 2,
I
you were
was 2
2.
to begin. with. I went with 5.
Doing five.
What did you do?
5.
5, okay.
5.
Is that where you're headed? He hasn't,
Not necessarily, no. So
not
what's,
there yet.
let's talk through why you guys prioritize constructability and sequencing over the end, I guess, the end use, right? How effective and easy it is to operate post-construction.
How complex is the alternative? Is additional staff or training needed?
Well, I think,
If you choose to, that's saying that you're not as concerned about what they have to go through to get it built, as long as after it's built, it's more efficient. It doesn't take as many people. It's not as complex, perhaps. That's the way I'm reading the
That's why I
comparison.
choose that first, but
Same here.
So I guess that's the question, is if certainly there's the next 5 years are going to look very different for each of the alternatives, but at the end of the day, I would think that the effectiveness and operability of the plant is more important than, we're talking about the 50 years of operation post-construction. And again, my bigger concerns with that are going to get absorbed into costs as well.
so you're thinking operations and maintenance
I would
consideration.
think that way, but that's why I'm curious to hear more about why.
my first
why
choice.
they're
That was our first.
Yeah, I see.
I was easily swayed.
Or did you switch to 5?
Well, yeah, just said that,
No.
but I had 2 first. But
And I noticed
I can be
we
swayed.
did take out some of the regulatory requirements from the subcategories. Was there any specific feedback or discussion as to why that?
I think mainly because, the ultimate plant is going to need to meet whatever regulatory requirements are at the time.
Mhm.
So the thought was that was kind of inherent already too. They're not going to build a plant that's not meeting regulatory requirements.
Mhm.
So I think that was where a lot of the comments came.
And I think I'd be more concerned about the constructability and sequencing, what it says here, what are the length of the shutdowns, while meeting your permit requirements and stuff. I mean, I think those are, to me, that would be important. As a homeowner, I'd want to know that.
And duration of construction is another consideration. That's something, if you're trying to operate and build on the same site, that could be a very interesting challenge.
Mhm.
Mhm.
You got demo and rebuild likely.
And there's not a lot of space to maneuver around
And I think
in that
about when
plant.
Takas came in here and the issues that we had with, I mean, I know it's not the same level, but it's the same kind of concept because they're coming in after the fact, and there was a lot of issues, so that's why, in part, why I'm meaning that way.
I'm not uncomfortable.
With 5,
Yeah.
okay.
So I'm sticking with 5.
Sticking with that, okay.
All righty. Operation maintenance considerations versus community impact.
That community
I was gonna
impact.
say, one of them has to be community.
Yeah, it has to. I mean, in my
I
opinion,
think.
yeah, I do too.
But I don't know which one.
I guess that was where I went with criterion 2. Knowing where I live and knowing the current plant situation.
But you went with community impact?
No,
No, you went with
correct.
operation. Oh,
Operations and
okay.
maintenance.
I also went for 2.
I think 2 is more
Sure.
important also.
Okay, That can be
Because I
quick.
think if the new plant, whatever it is, or refurbished plant, however you want to, if that's working to spec, you will be automatically minimizing community impact, what I'm thinking.
Okay, I'm swayed with that, so I'm good.
Use of existing infrastructure versus safety.
I'm a four again.
I had already, yeah, I had said safety.
4,
Use of existing infrastructure versus constructability and sequencing.
Did you say 5?
I'm thinking five, yeah.
I was thinking 5.
I'm rereading the criteria again, and it's changing my mind.
My only comment is on under 3, does the alternative make the most efficient use of the existing structures, equipment?
Mhm.
Well, I mean, can we perhaps conceive of a idea over the next 5 years that perhaps wastewater, the current facility may have issues?
You could, yeah, absolutely.
So, you would want the construction of a plant to move as quickly as
Mhm.
possible.
I mean, just
And the one piece I think that's really usable is the belt press, because that was only built a few years ago.
Yeah.
But everything goes back in history. So it's a challenge. And didn't Fries and Nichols indicate there was a number of issues, potential issues with meeting all the permit requirements of the current plant?
All that.
I mean, I remember that.
Mhm.
So, I mean, that wasn't the first time that that's been noted. So anyway,
So you're leaning towards 3? No?
no, I'm leaning towards 5.
I mean, just to point out, we previously prioritized operations and maintenance over use of existing, and then we also prioritized constructability ahead of operations and maintenance. So if we were to follow suit, we would be number 5.
I'm okay with that.
Me too.
Use of existing infrastructure versus community impact.
I was 3.
I was
I'm
six.
6.
I was 6 on that one.
Yeah, 6.
All right. Safety versus constructability and sequencing.
Well,
Safety.
Yeah. Safety's always there. That's why I opted for 5.
Me too.
He always has to be concerned.
Yeah, it's one of those things. You fall one side or the other. Is,
Mhm.
So 5 and, is it 5? Just pick 5?
That
5?
was 5.
5. Pat,
I was 4.
you were 4. Oh, okay, I'm missing.
But if you're all
I missed
four-
her.
Look at our previous ones and see what,
Yeah,
how
well,
consistent we're.
we pick safety every time.
Mhm.
yeah, that's where I'm at.
I agree.
We agree on 4?
We do.
We are.
Okay.
Okay, Ron.
Yep.
Okay.
Safety versus community impact.
50.
Yeah, safety. I mean, gosh. Yeah.
Drum roll, last one. Constructability and sequencing versus community impact.
Well, I'm not going to start.
Yeah,
I know what I think
I,
about.
I would go with 5, constructability and sequencing.
I would go with 6.
I went with 5.
I've got 5.
I did as well.
Okay, we're good. All right.
Let me read
Yeah.
list these just to make sure. I'm gonna just go right down.
Okay.
All right.
1, 1, 4, 1, 1, 2, 4, 5, 2, 4, 5, 6, 4, 4, 5.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Okay.
Fantastic.
It'll be hermetically sealed until the end of January.
Oh, yeah. Like the Oscar envelopes, yeah.
Well, there was a district, at least one, that had asked, can we just, that they were thinking that maybe the analysis of the four options could somehow be manipulated if we knew what this was. And so I said, you know what, they don't need it until the end of January. They're good not getting it until January, but in February, they're gonna be far enough with the analysis of the four options to then put this towards it and figure out actually the recommendation for March. So that's their drop dead to have this by the end of January. So I'm gonna keep them all until the end of January and then give them to them.
How far along are you on the most?
We have 1, 2, 3. So 7, we're gonna do it in December, and we're 3 in. So we have 4 more, 2 tomorrow, 2 Wednesday, and then 3 of them we'll do in January.
So our next agenda item is to consider and authorize Garber Engineering's recommendation of award for retail wastewater collection system rehabilitation year 2 and authorize WWA to proceed.
All right, so recall a couple years ago, a company, engineering firm named Garber, did an evaluation of your sewer facilities, sewer line work, manholes, et cetera. Just a couple months ago, they just and it was decided to break the repairs into 3 years or 3 phases. So phase 1 was complete a couple months ago. While phase 1 was being constructed, phase 2 was in design,
Mhm.
and then phase 2 finally got approvals from government agencies, and then it was bid recently, and that's what you see before here. Now, phase 3 is under design currently, so they'll be under design while phase 2 is under construction. Received bids from 2 different contractors. The low bidder was actually the company that just finished phase 1. So I think their familiarity with the expectations, familiarity with the work, with the engineering firm and WWA, I think probably led them to have some comfort level in their bid, I would guess. That's usually the case. So 2 bids came in. And keep in mind, this is split between, all the MUDs except for I think 36 wasn't in it, but we had, it's pretty rare. The engineering estimate was within
Yeah,
Amazing.
Yeah.
I was stunned.
a couple $1,000s on them.
I was stunned when I went through that. Never seen that.
Yeah, not that close. So we have good bids. We have a contractor that we.
Experienced.
Yeah, felt good recommending. So the Garver issued the recommendation of award to award the contract to Texas Pride. And I think in the amount of,
404,240. Correct?
there you go.
Is that right? Yeah.
Oh, for y'all, yes.
For us,
For your share, yes.
Yeah.
for MUD 6. I'm sorry, I was reading.
Yep. So total bid was, total bid is 1,447.
Back.
You had-
Or I was just, how I focus on MUD 6.
Yeah,
Yeah. So.
that's what we're on the hook for that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I was looking at. So I'm
Yeah.
like, okay.
The concurrence, and I've reviewed it as well, met with them, and I feel good with it as well, so.
Do I have a motion to approve that?
I make that motion to approve the recommendation and authorize Woodlands Water Agency to proceed.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. All right, meeting adjourned.
All right.